Here at the Dana Centre tonight, we're asking the question, does science fiction really predict the world of tomorrow? And we've got 4 different speakers who are talking to us about their vision of the future. So what were you talking about this evening?
Well, it was a very brief presentation and I had 2 clips. The first clip was about a think tank where I worked in Brussels, where we had 100 in the end, 100 boffins from all around the world. It was multidisciplinary, and it was about, really, in the end, I divided up the ways in which science and technology are going to affect our futures as A, B, C, and D. A for atoms, everything to do with physics, everything from, solving problems in science to having atomic replicators. B for bytes, anything to do with computing, ranging from the stuff that we now know to robotics and artificial intelligence. And C, cells, anything to do with the life sciences. And I added in a D, which is how we're going to perceive a day. A tiny unit of life, a tiny unit of time, but not the largest. Something that is manageable, because I think our cultures are going to change. Some say we're going to live longer, and we're also measuring out, how much do we have in terms of energy, how much time do we have in terms of this, that, and the other. So that's how I saw it. And I ended up after these presentations being sort of optimistic, which is where I began. On the one hand, we've got to do things about energy, we've got to worry about pestilence, war, nuclear war, and so on. On the other hand, human beings have pulled through before, so one has to be sort of qualified about that. And I think when you have people like this and people like that, there are forces of good in the world, whatever anyone thinks.
So if I had to push you to get off the fence, would you think that we're doomed as a race, or we've got some hope there?
I think I would be a qualified optimist, but it would be very, 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 very qualified, and it's not based on anything. I mean, the planet's is going to disappear after billions of years, so it's not going to last forever. How long we last and what we do with it, I'm a very, very qualified optimist, and that's partly based on evidence and partly based on blind faith.
How did you enjoy this evening?
I thought it was brilliant, really. I mean, it was a packed house. Very vocal people. They seem to know a lot about science fiction, and the discussion group I led were excellent.
And what do you think, as knowing what you know, are you an optimist or a pessimist about the future?
I'm both. I'm both and neither, because for me, future depends on people, not on technology, and how we use technology. But one of the things that troubles me is that we're not individually in control of anything. We're like a swarm of bees, really. Something comes along and we're all attracted to it, and we just do things with it. And so things progress in a way that's not under the control of anyone. And maybe that's a good thing, because maybe if people were in control, people were in control at one point and they invented wars, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a good thing that we're not in control.
If we are part of a hive mind, then does that play with our idea of free will?
Yeah, free will's a very difficult concept that I haven't got the hours to talk about. I mean, I think there's different kinds of free will. There's a kind of autonomy that's, we could be programmed, for instance, by the world, but nonetheless have a limited amount of free will. I mean, people talk about free will now in odd ways, because neuroscientists clearly don't believe in free will. When you get all this brain scan stuff showing that people make decisions like minutes before they ever reach consciousness, and people imagine that shows you don't have free will. But the trouble with any kind of psychological science is that it's all about out of context. If you stick people inside a machine, because I asked them, I said, what were the decisions you were making that showed you they weren't free will? And it was things like, right, you've got a red button here and a yellow button, and I want you to decide which one to press. So I say to them, well, what about decisions like, I've just had an affair, she's pregnant, my wife's pregnant, which one should I go with? Does that happen without us being consciously aware of? And they say, oh, that's too difficult for science, we can't do that.
I don't really know what to say to that.
No, sorry. It's left you a bit non.
It has. I'm just like, whoa, okay. It's my fault for bringing up free will.
The question about free will.
I did. I should have known better, clearly. Okay, and finally, is there anything that you'd like to talk about from this evening?
About this evening? Well, it was a great pleasure to be with a bunch of science fiction actors and writers, I mean, usually I'm on a panel with people that are very argumentative and we all fight, and that's what we're there for, to debate. And I found that lot very agreeable. And I was quite surprised because we all seem to share the same kind of ideas and the same culture, which is unusual.
Science fiction's a great unifier in a weird way.
Yes, it can be, really. I mean, it depends on which kind of science fiction you like, I suppose. I mean, you could get arguments about, I've heard the steampunk people argue with the Gibsonian people about, all this virtual reality thing. It's all
Even though,
things.
William Gibson wrote a book with Bruce Sterling called The Difference Engine, which is steampunk, so he was kind
that's true, that's true, yes, that's true, yeah.
I mean, you've got the hard and the weird sci-fi, the tech versus the strange.
Well, I mean, I've been reading sci-fi for probably longer than you've been alive, and yet you seem to know an awful lot more about it than I do. Mainly because I have no memory.
I spend a lot of time on trains, basically. That's probably the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Peter, how did you enjoy this evening?
Excellent. I thought it was informative. I thought great range of different voices. Learned more about robots than I possibly ever need to know. And met a real robot, actually several former robots, people who play robots. So I thought it was, lovely evening. What a great place, and what a great sort of theme you had going throughout.
I like the Asimov clip, actually. That was quite nice to see.
Yes, but what I did think about that was that all science fiction, as my thesis is, just reveals about the time it's conceived. It was full of behaviourist ideas and rule-bound ideas of what humanity is like. So our robots will have a conscience because we'll tell them what to do, and misunderstood that how human conscience works is through empathy. It's not a rule-bound game. You see somebody else suffering and you're upset. So I think science fiction always reveals the era of its making.
If you program a robot with the ability to simulate suffering, though, I think there's been an experiment that shows that humans will have the same empathic response.
But that's us being tricked, as the old automata from the 17th century, believing, oh my God, that clockwork bird is real. That's not quite the same as the robot or the clockwork bird going, oh, I really do feel sorry for you. That's just tricking us. But you're right, the key to empathy, isn't it? It's mirror neurons. They've been discovered, these, which actually, when I see you holding that mic, the same impulses go through my nervous system as if I was holding it. Did you know that? It's a brilliant book. Ramachandran's new book, The Telltale Mind, a neuroscientist, V.S. Ramachandran. Don't read science fiction, read science fact.
I read everything.
Well, read that.
All you need to do is...
That tells you everything, all about synesthesia, phantom limbs, mirror neurons. It's not what's the other. Anyway, it's a brilliant, brilliant book, and about linguistics. Great speech.
I'm going to be continued because there's only a few minutes of tape of this, so I'm just going to ask you: would you describe yourself as an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to the future of humanity?
I am an optimist of the will and a pessimist of the intellect, as Walter Benjamin said. How rude can I be on this? I probably can't say anything a bit provocative.
It's going to go on the internet. So.
Okay, but there's a famous line actually in a play I just wrote, this was for Lenny Henry, that I do think I'm living in a small speck in the middle of nowhere. It's a speck of carbon in the cold universe, but every morning I wake up happy.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So, how did you enjoy this evening?
I mean, I did enjoy it. It was definitely a diving in the deep end for me, but I did enjoy it, and I felt, as all the other speakers were speaking, and so interesting with lots of references to science fiction, I thought, oh my God, I'm at the wrong event. I'm talking about something completely different, but actually it did seem to tie in just about enough. So it was really interesting. It was a challenging audience because they were not, say, your average. If you do a stand-up comedy, you get this kind of wide cross-section of people. Here it was people who were very clever. It was very obvious. And I'm not very well educated, but I'm very enthusiastic. So I was very worried that it would all backfire, but it didn't. And they were fantastic and very tolerant and patient.
And would you describe yourself as an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to the future?
Oh yes, I'm a guarded optimist. I hope a realistic optimist. But I do feel that I feel the pressure mounting, and the awareness that we have some very serious problems to deal with is gradually seeping up through the kind of, in a sense, the kind of the clog or the weight that's pressing down on us from vested interests and powerful people who are going, no, it's all fine, don't worry about it, we don't need to change. And there's actually so much pressure going, no, we really do, actually, guys. I know you want to sell a lot more of your product, but we really do need to change. And I do feel that there is a groundswell, and that's, the internet is a very key part of that, because it's that ability that there's loads of like-minded people are thinking, and there's other people listening and going, oh, hang on, they might have got a point, whereas they might only have seen an advert for the latest car or the latest washing machine. They're now going, oh, hang on, there's another noise beginning to creep in.
And in terms of sustainability, traditionally sounds like quite a dry subject. Do you think that science fiction can help to bring something like that to life for more people, maybe help them understand?
I do think it's possible, and I'm really trying to push the idea of science fiction that deals with stuff I'm working on that shows that it might be possible, that it's going to be very difficult and it's very complicated, but it might be possible to live in a modern, technologically advanced society essentially without burning stuff. It's that simple. If we stop burning stuff, so that includes nuclear fuel, coal, oil, gas, stop burning stuff, we could do it. And that's the really difficult bit.
Is there anything that you want to add? Because I've got no more questions.
No, I can't think of anything. I don't know. I mean, I think I do have faith in human nature and in the possibility. It's such a difficult thing to say. I actually have faith in the middle class, and it's a really unfashionable thing to say. And the middle class are expanding enormously. And what middle class people do? One, very important, have less children. Two, talk to each other. And they're annoying, and they disrupt things, and the ruling class hate them, and they can't stand the middle class. Annoying middle class. They've always been the same, but the middle classes have always been the people who've started change. And I am unashamedly boring middle class pillock, but I love causing a bit of trouble. Not a lot. I don't want to break the law, but I like to cause a little bit of trouble.
So you've got a kind of shelf of hummus as opposed to a whole fridge of hummus.
I have a huge truckload of hummus and thousands of pairs of sandals.
Thanks very much.